Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. We're really going to get into review the Zhiyun camera gimbal stabilizer. I wanted to do this outside originally, but it's rained all day today and it rained yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to really get out there and do a whole bunch. I did record a little bit for yesterday's video when we were talking to Kristen about her 5 days into her liquid diet and stuff. So I did use that to record that, but what I did was, here in the house, I just took the exact same shots. I walked straight forward and straight back. I did it without the gimbal, and then I did it with the gimbal. Also, the issue I have with the Zhiyun is the Zhiyun won't actually connect to the phone and record at 1080p at 60 frames per second. It will only do 1080p at 30 frames per second. So my question going into it was, is there that much of a difference that that's something I need to necessarily worry about? Now, on the other hand, I can just close the app for the gimbal. The gimbal still works as a stabilizer and then record at 1080p 60 frames per second for those shots that I absolutely have to have at 60 frames per second, where it'll actually give you that extra detail. But for the most part, the eye can't actually distinguish a difference between 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second. And usually you're only going to use 60 frames per second where you're doing like B-roll or landscape shots, or you're just doing like video montages, and it kind of brings that little bit of extra value. But when you're doing like face-to-face stuff like this, vlogs and stuff, the 60 frames per second isn't necessarily needed as long as you've got decent lighting. So I'm going to show you the video right now of me just walking through the house at 1080p 60 frames per second with the gimbal. And then this one's without the gimbal. And then this footage is going to be with the gimbal using Zhiyun's app at 1080p at 30 frames per second. So again, the app only does 30 frames per second. The really cool thing about the app is it does have like some time-lapse options. It has some focal point options, so you can actually just set the gimbal on its tripod, press a button, and in theory what it should do is follow you as you walk around. I haven't had a chance to play with that yet. It's not something I ever necessarily needed, but it's something I'll definitely look into. So, and I'll give you some more updates, or you'll even see a video where it's done. Now, with that being said, I do have the Canon G7X, and it won't sit on this gimbal. This gimbal is for phones, iPhones, Androids, and it does have an option to buy an action camera. So if I was to get like a GoPro 5 or 6, you could buy a little adapter that would let the action camera sit on it, but it won't hold the Canon. Now, here's the interesting thing though. I found that my phone is a lot more useful when I just want to record on the go. So I've been using that a lot more, mainly because it's just a little more accessible. And then I'll use the Canon G7X whenever I'm doing like low light stuff, like rides, or we're going into like caves or somewhere dark. The Canon G7X outperforms any phone at low light. So, plus I'm looking at getting a new phone upgraded, maybe the Note 8 or the Note 9, and those cameras are even better. They come with dual cameras, so I would, I need to test those out as far as low light goes versus the G7X. I imagine the G7X is still better, but this does kind of make me really want to get a gimbal for the G7X because it does do such a good job in low light vision. It would be nice to have it whenever you're just riding through rides. It just gives it that little bit steadier shot. Plus there's some cool features that the gimbal has that I'll talk about right now. All right, so this is the gimbal for the phone. It's pretty big. It's got a little bit of weight to it. So you always want to make sure the phone's in the gimbal before you actually try and balance it first. So, all right, and the clamps here are spring, they're like a spring loaded, so it spring locks in. and you can record in either vertical or horizontal. I know this looks like it's set up to record vertical, but once everything's set up, it will record horizontal. If you wanted to record it in vertical, you would loosen this knob, turn this sideways, and then tighten the knob back, and then that would let it sit back in. So now that the phone is in, you know, it's in the cradle and everything, then what you would do is here at the bottom, you're just gonna push the arm out this way, bring it around, and then just kind of fold. So you can see there it's almost balanced because, again, I've played with it a lot, so it looks balanced. There's a screw back here that lets you adjust the arm length here that'll help you set the balance on it in case your phone's a different size than mine. This is a Galaxy 8. So then we go down here, turn it the right way. So we go down here and there's a power button right here. I know you can't see it, but there's a power button right here. So you press and hold the power button until the light comes on down at the bottom. And if you'll watch, see, it sets the phone up so that it aligns properly. So, and then this is your battery life. This changes. All right, so I got a little bit of light on now. So there's your power button. There's the power button, the record button. This lets you change from a locked focus to a free flip focus. And I'll show you what that means here in a second. This is your zoom here. That changes your focus from autofocus to, I can't remember what it said now. Anyways, so that changes your focus. See, it's got the crosshairs. That's to take a picture, and you've got menus, and then your display, and then the different options you have for the camera. So let me get the camera loaded. I'll show you the app and everything. So, all right, so the app's coming on now. And then you just hit, it uses Bluetooth, so there's a button, you hit connect device, and then it's called this one's called Smooth 40 or whatever. So it connects, and then it goes right into the camera mode. So, all right, I'm gonna show you the different functions. So you've got the free flowing focus. So basically, if I move it, the focus kind of moves with where I'm pointing it. So like, so you can see here, I've got the handle this way. If I turn the handle this way, so, all right, so if the handle's this way, if I turn it this way, it auto corrects the thing. So watch, I'll flip it. So turn it this way, and then it goes. Now, the locked focus is pretty neat. So you turn the locked focus on, you switch it down. So see how it's like this, and then if I turn, see how it doesn't change the way it's facing, no matter what I do. Now, also what's really cool, like let's say you've got it in locked focus and you change scenes all of a sudden, there's this little trigger right here. There's an up trigger and a down trigger. And so let's say, so I've got it turned this way so you can see it. Now if I push the down trigger, it slowly spins it back into the new locked position. If I press the up trigger, it like quick turns it. So that's pretty neat. I like that. So you can lock, so like let's say you've got somebody talking, you can lock focus on them, and you can just kind of like walk around them, and it's going to stay focused in that one spot. So as long as they don't move. Now with that being said, I did try that with Kristen last night. So I put it on locked focus and I put it on her, and then when I went to move, you kind of have to make a wide turn, and I went too quick, and so it didn't really stay focused on her. And then the zoom, like I said, this is your zoom, so it will zoom. You know, but you have to use the app for that. So if you're trying to do 1080p 60 frames per second, you can't use any of the apps, the functions within the app. So like the zoom and stuff, you have to do it manually using your camera. You can definitely tell a difference from when I'm walking without the gimbal to when I'm walking with the gimbal. It's an absolute distinct difference. 1080p at 60 frames versus 1080p at 30 frames, there's not a distinct difference, and it wouldn't be terrible to just use the app in order to do the recording, because then I get the functionality of the gimbal, the recording, turning it on and off, without actually having to touch the screen, and I like that option. So in the need that I need 1080p at 60 frames per second, I'll do it manually through the phone and not use the app. The gimbal still works whether the app's on or not. The app just gives you the functionality of the buttons, the zoom, the different menus, changing your ISO settings, changing your like white balance and your focal points and stuff like that. That's what the app's really there for. I read a lot of comments on the app for this. With the S8 so far, I've had absolutely no issues, and I really have to say it's a pretty smooth app. Again, I've only got about maybe about 45 minutes of playtime into the app with the gimbal, but I've done pretty much everything I can do to try and crash the app to see if it's an issue, and I haven't been able to do it. So I'm not really sure where the disconnect for other people is, but for me, the app works great, the gimbal works great. I think this was about $150, and that included like a next day shipping, because I did get it through Amazon Prime, but I didn't want to wait 2 days. So I paid like $6 for the next day shipping. That was super cheap. But this is awesome. I love it. I'm going to try it out in the parks. It is really big. And I will tell you, I've heard that gimbals do get questioned by security when you're going to the theme parks because they look like selfie sticks. They can function like a selfie stick. So if you're going to tell them it's a gimbal, use it like a gimbal and don't use it like a selfie stick. Don't run around the parks trying to stick it out of a ride or anything like that. That's their main focus, is not so much that you have a selfie stick, but people like to stick them outside of rides while they're on them. And I would use this walking around the parks, use the reverse video to record myself when I'm talking. It's very smooth. I really enjoy it. What little bit I've been able to do with it. And I'm gonna also show you right here at the end of this, just where like I grabbed it and like I was doing like up and down and side to side, just kind of like seeing what I could do to get it to jostle a little bit, and it did really well. It was really smooth. So let me know what you thought of this. This is made by Zhiyun. DJI also makes one. Theirs is $139, but if you want the tripod, it's another $55. Zhiyun came with the tripod, the charging cable, the app, and everything, and it was I think it was $146 or 100. It may have been cheaper than that. It may have been $140. When I say 150, I'm rounding up, of course. That's just what I do. But definitely, if you decide to get one, let me know if you enjoy it. I am totally in love with this thing. I've been wanting one for a while because I can see the bounce in when you're walking and stuff, and it gets very nauseating. Even for me, like editing it, I'm like, oh man, this is terrible. So let me know what you thought of the difference in the footage. Let me know if you noticed a difference between 60 frames and 30 frames. And just enjoy this little review for the Zhiyun Gimbal. Again, I'm definitely a fan of it. It's not a paid promotion. They didn't give me this for free. I bought this with my own money because I wanted it. And it's just my honest opinion. So far right now, I haven't found any flaws in it. It didn't take me terribly long to set up the adjustments to weigh it. I will say it's a little tight trying to use it with my case, so I do have to take the case off. I kind of wish I didn't, but that's not a super big deal. You know, I'll pull it out, put it right back in the case. But I do kind of wish I had the case on it just for extra safety purposes. Again, it will work with the case. It just doesn't necessarily fit in the back cradle as well. It sits between the clamps perfectly fine. It just doesn't sit in the lip cradle at the end of the Zhiyun. And then, of course, if this is on it, it sticks out a little bit further, so I have to adjust the weight balance. But other than that, so far so good. Pretty good product. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I love you guys. Till tomorrow.